This is a stimulus update and daily news report. Got some major updates to share with you. There is now an official $2,000 direct payment going out to certain Americans. I'll give you more details on that. Looks like Joe Manchin has finally pulled the plug for good on the Build Back Better. I'll give you the Democrat and Republican perspective of what's going on there. And with the Congress having a low approval rating of about 16%, I'm going to play a video clip of what Bernie Sanders has to say about that. You don't want to miss what he says there, and I'll give you some other more important updates as well. Hope you're having a fantastic Friday. If you appreciate the fact-based, fast-paced updates, hit the like button down below. So Biden approval rating rises modestly from record low. So this is just a couple days ago, I guess. President Biden was at an all-time low. So I guess once you hit rock bottom, you could only go up from there. Kind of like with gas prices. Once we hit the top, you could only go down from there. So when it comes to President Biden, so two-day national poll found that 55% of Americans disapprove of Biden's job performance, and he is at a 39% of approval. So basically, depending on the poll, a lot of them were record lows, but it looks like he is starting to make a small comeback slightly. But when it comes to Congress, looks like Congress has a 16% approval rating, and with Bernie Sanders being the only independent senator in Congress, take a look at this video clip and what Bernie Sanders has to say about that. Take a look.
The last poll that I saw had Congress, United States Congress, with a 16% approval rating, 16%. And to me, this was shocking, really quite shocking, because I suspect that the 16% who believed that Congress was doing something meaningful really don't know what's going on. So what is Congress doing right now at a time in which we face so many massive problems, not to mention climate change, not to mention a massive housing crisis where 18 million families are paying half of their income in housing, not to mention the student debt that 45 million Americans are carrying? What is Congress about? What are we working on right this minute? And the answer is that for 2 months, a 107-member conference committee has been meeting behind closed doors to provide over $50 billion in corporate welfare with no strings attached to the highly profitable microchip industry. No, we're not talking about health care for all. No, we're not talking about making higher education affordable. No, we're not talking about making sure that young people can earn decent salaries when they become teachers. No, we're not talking about leading the world in combating climate change. We're talking about giving $50 billion in corporate welfare with no strings attached, a blank check, to the highly profitable microchip industry. And yes, if you can believe it, and I'm talking to the 16% of Americans who have a favorable opinion of Congress, if you can believe it, this legislation may also provide a $10 billion bailout to Jeff Bezos, the second wealthiest person in America, so that his company, Blue Origin, can launch a rocket ship to the moon.
What are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with what Bernie Sanders has to say? Although he is a career politician, he's been saying the same thing over and over and over again. So Bernie Sanders beating the same drum. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree with Bernie Sanders? Could Congress step up their job? Let me know your thoughts. So speaking of Bernie Sanders, in the past, Bernie Sanders presses Joe Biden on $2,000 stimulus checks, saying promises must be kept. So when it comes to stimulus checks going out, if a recession happens, could have a higher chance, also a higher chance of a federal stimulus check if the midterm elections are coming up and Democrats start to try to buy some votes there. So I'll keep you updated. But when it comes to official $2,000 payments going out, thousands of Americans can apply for $2,000 bonus payment now. See if you're eligible in the exact date it closes. So this is going for veterans in Minnesota. So veterans in Minnesota, this was announced last week by Governor Tim Walz, announced last week that veterans who served during global war on terrorism can apply for bonus payment from the state. So this is just for veterans in Minnesota. Minnesota, but it could be a precedent. We haven't really seen $2,000 checks being given out, so it looks like $2,000 checks could be a thing. Let me know your thoughts. Should veterans get this extra $2,000? Should it be distributed to other groups of people too? Let me know your thoughts on that. So basically, it'll give $600 for those who did not receive any of the following medals, and it talks about a few different campaigns and things there, and then $1,200 to those who were awarded any of the following medals. So so those are going to veterans in Minnesota. And then back to inflation. So inflation surge challenges Democrats' economic plan. So there was a huge bill that was going to save money for prescription drugs. It had climate, it had tax proposals, potentially other stimulus provisions, but it looks like that is no longer the case. Before we get to what exactly Manchin did, take a look at the Democrat perspective of inflation and how things are going. And then I'm going to play the Republican perspective, so you get to see both sides there. Take a look at the Democrat perspective first, then the Republican.
So to your point, Senator, and the president's point on gas prices, realistically, what could this trip really do to ease not just prices at the pump, but potentially, because of its role in inflation overall, inflation?
Well, the prices at the pump in my home state of Delaware has come down week after week now. It's come down almost 50 cents from its high.
But still, I think I still think about $1.50 more than it was this time last year, just to put it in perspective. But continue, Senator.
Thank you. I do think that there are only 3 countries that I'm aware of that have significant untapped reserves that could go onto the global market: Iran, Venezuela, and Saudi Arabia. Of those 3, I think having a meeting with the Saudis, the Qataris, the Emiratis, 3 of the key oil and gas producers in the Middle East, makes far more sense than otherwise making some accommodation with the dangerous and aggressive regime in Iran or with the Maduro regime in Venezuela, which continues to oppress its people and to violate fundamental norms of both democracy and human rights. So I do think that this can make a significant difference for European energy security, which is critical to the path forward in Ukraine, and because it's an integrated global market for oil and gas, can also help with global prices and inflation.
I don't need to tell you, but all these programs, and many you haven't mentioned, depend on holding control of the Senate, the House, in November. And let me talk about the impact of inflation, because it was a new 40-year high last month, up to 9.1% from last year, up 9.1% from last year. A pound of chicken up 36 cents, a pound of ground beef up 53, milk 59, eggs up $1.07. How do you counter that on the campaign trail? How do Democrats make the sell that they deserve to stay in power in November?
Well, Chris, one of the key complaints I've heard for years from Delawareans about prices is the price of prescription drugs. Prescription drugs aren't optional. You have to take them. And family after family, from seniors to parents of infants in Delaware, have said to me, we have to do something on prescription prices. Democrats have a plan. We are poised to pass it. Minority Leader McConnell, Republican Leader Mitch McConnell, is saying if you pass that reconciliation plan to reduce prescription drug prices, I will prevent us from taking up and passing the other key plan that will help reduce prices, the so-called Competes Act. It was passed out of the Senate a year ago by a big bipartisan margin. It would reduce the price of semiconductor chips by increasing their supply. Why don't we have enough affordable, for example, used cars currently available to buy? Because there aren't enough semiconductor chips. So there's 2 things that Democrats are trying to move forward that would reduce the price of things that really matter to people: prescription drugs and vehicles. And we don't have full cooperation from our colleagues here in the Senate in the Republican minority. There are some working well with us on this Competes Act, and others trying to find a way to block us. I think we have a plan and a path forward. The president has a plan and a path forward. We need Republicans to join us if we're going to reduce prices at the grocery store, at the pharmacy counter, and at the pump.
What are your thoughts there? Not much that the Democrats could say that is being done or can be done because Democrats are in control right now and inflation is really high. So it gives the Republicans an easy way to point fingers at the Democrats. But can Democrats be doing more about it since they are in power? Should there be more stimulus provisions? Let me know your thoughts on that. So when it comes to the big Hail Mary that was done by the Democrats, which was the Build Back Better. So Manchin delivers crushing blow to Democratic agenda. Basically, this was sort of a Build Back Better revival morphed into something else. But yeah, Joe Manchin basically pulling the plug, putting the nail in the coffin, any other analogy you want. Take a look at this. This is the Republican perspective, what they think about Joe Manchin, the Democrats' inflation. Take a look at this right here.
Senator Joe Manchin dealing a crushing blow to President Biden's agenda and the Democrats ahead of the midterm elections. The West Virginia Democrat telling Majority Leader Chuck Schumer that he will not support a spending package with either climate provisions or new tax increases on companies or wealthy individuals. It comes as the nation faces 13 straight months of surging inflation as the Democrats are still trying to get through a reconciliation package which includes higher taxes and trillions in more spending. Manchin's office released a statement saying, in part, it's time for leaders to put political agendas aside, reevaluate and adjust to the economic realities the country faces to avoid taking steps that add fuel to the inflation fire. Joining the conversation all morning long this morning is Fox Business' Dagan McDowell and Mahoney Asset Management CEO Ken Mahoney. Great to see everybody this morning. Thank you so much for being here. Dagan, you got to give it to Joe Manchin. He is sticking to his guns, even as Chuck Schumer pushes and pushes and pushes. I'll just point out that the deadline to get a reconciliation package is fast approaching. They can't do anything more after September 30th, so Chuck Schumer wants something done before September 30th. Joe Manchin's not having it with inflation at 40-year highs.
Right, but this goes back to the Democrats only see virulent inflation as a problem for them politically. They don't see it as a problem for the American people. As the Wall Street Journal pointed out the other day, Americans are suffering the largest reduction in real wages since the 1970s. And thankfully, there is some realism and even financial wisdom in Washington, D.C. in the form of Joe Manchin to say, we're not spending another dime making inflation worse. And we're not going to raise taxes, not even on corporations, because that will hit the supply side at a time because of the Federal Reserve. We're going into a recession if we're not already in one. And I love the headline on the New York Times website about this. Manchin rejects climate and tax talks, a crushing blow to Biden's agenda. Keep talking about the crushing blow after blow to the American way of life because of this fiscal policy and because of this monetary policy.
Yeah, and why should anybody be surprised? I mean, look what has happened in the last year with inflation going from 1.4% to now 9.1%. Ken, it's as if they're not listening at all to even think about pushing further spending and higher taxes. We're about to get another potentially 1-point rate hike, making our borrowing that much more expensive. So you've got higher borrowing costs, higher food, higher inflation, and yet now Chuck Schumer and the Democrats want to raise taxes.
So it looks like Manchin finally out of it, and I don't think Democrats are going to make that September 30th deadline. It's getting kind of tight, and they probably would have had to had everything done now because the reconciliation process is a very long process. But let me know your thoughts on that. Now that you've seen both the Democrat and Republican perspectives, which side do you side more with? What was the cause of inflation, or is it not a Democrat-Republican issue at all? Let me know your thoughts on that. And that is all the news that I have for you today to hopefully brighten your day a bit. Here's my daughter Bella's tip of the day.
Hi guys, this is Bella's tip of the day. I want to tell you that you could be anything that you want in the world. You could be, for example, you could be a veterinarian, take care of dogs, help dogs, or you could be a nurse. And you could help people or you could be a doctor, or you could be like anything, as you want. You are your own self. You could be whatever you want when you get older, if you're older. Bye, that was Bill's Tip of the Day.
Thank you so much for watching. Appreciate all of your time, all of your support. So this weekend, looks like it's going to be rained out here in Myrtle Beach. Going to try to sneak in some pickleball. Hopefully, if the weather is good enough, hopefully you have a great weekend. If you want to check out my latest pickleball video on my Wise Pickleball channel, you could click up here, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, be safe. Thank you for watching.